word out on. So Steve, you're a board member of Dance Exchange. You want to share with us some things about this wonderful organization and what's going on next weekend?
Absolutely. Thanks, Steve. So I actually serve on the Creative Aging Advisory Committee for the Dance Exchange. I've been doing lots of work with them over the years. So Dance Exchange, it was founded in 1976, as Steve said, by Liz Lerman, under the artistic direction of Cassie Medor since 2011. Dance Exchange is a not-for-profit intergenerational dance organization based in Tacoma Park, Maryland. I see there are people here from all over the country, but that's okay because this is a national organization. They collaborate across generations, disciplines, and communities to channel the power of dance making as a means for dialogue, critical reflection, and creative engine for thought and action. So we're inviting you to join older adults, caregivers, artists, and creative aging leaders from across the country and the world for the Dance On Festival. It's a free, first of its kind online festival celebrating aging with dance, creativity, and connection. So it's on Friday, May 14th, and you can watch virtual performances by dancers ranging in the age from 29 to 85. And then on Saturday, May 15th, you can choose from a range of online classes and creative workshops, plus panel discussions on intergenerational creative collaboration, the art of caregiving, addressing social isolation, and many ways older adults dance on. So all ages are welcome and no previous dance experience is required. And you can register for free at danceexchange.org. And Steve's going to show you a little video right now.
Yeah, and I know a lot of us out there, like myself, are really excited that there's virtual dancing events now, so people can't see me dancing, but I can have fun dancing in front of my computer. So yeah, let me maximize my screen, and we're going to play this video here, and I am hoping that
dance on to be inspired. Dance on together. Dance on in resilience. Dance on to celebrate. Dance on, an online festival celebrating creative aging, brought to you by Dance Exchange. Tune in May 14th for a festival kickoff with performances. Join us May 15th to gather, move, and make together. Dance On, celebrating aging with dance, creativity, and connection. Join us May 14th and 15th for a free online festival.
All right, I love it. And that sounds wonderful, Steve. And we need more of this, absolutely. So so you're going to drop all the contact info and stuff if you haven't already into chat. And we hope to see many of you there. And I would love to even, like, after the event, maybe have some of the folks from Dance Exchange come on one of our discussions and do a little sort of recap of lessons learned at that event.
Absolutely. I think they'd love to do that. There are already over 350 people signed up from around the world. So I encourage all of you to join us. It should be a great event.
I love it. All right. Well, Steve, thanks for joining in, and we'll get you behind the curtain there. And now we can officially kick off our discussion, which I have been really looking forward to. And that is on artificial intelligence to connect caregivers. And to lead this discussion, we have Andrew Lekishman. Did I pronounce it the correct way?
Lakashman, close enough.
Lakashman. I have never pronounced the last name correctly unless it was Smith. So Andrew, I forgot how we intersected, but you've got a really interesting story and a really interesting project that you're working on. And so we're real psyched to jump into that. But before we do, let's get a glimpse at who you are and what led you up to this interesting discipline of artificial intelligence in the senior living space.
Absolutely. Thank you for the intro. My mother is actually a care manager in the Bay Area, and she's in the chat and watching right now. And I've been observing her practice, and about a little over a year and a half ago, right before the pandemic started, we went to a healthcare hackathon at Stanford and UCSF up in the peninsula. And we worked on prototyping the initial thing that would become Meadows, what I'm going to talk about today, which is we wanted to make a Google Home or an Alexa that an older adult could talk to every day and help manage their chronic conditions like diabetes, heart disease. And over just a few months after we completed that, we went into changing around how everything worked and making everything simpler. And we've arrived at the current model that I'll talk a little bit more about today. But that's kind of the sort of healthcare background.
Wow, I love it. I love it because one of the things that we love having entrepreneurs and innovators on these discussions. But one of the things that I really like hearing is that the inspiration to an idea was through an aging life care manager who we feature regularly and are super important components in the caregiving ecosystem. And the fact that this is also a mother and son project is just very intriguing. Now, out of curiosity, your background, prior to this hackathon, give us a little glimpse at what you've been up to in your career that led up to this.
Absolutely. So before this, my primary healthcare experience was running audiology practices in the Midwest. And so we started with about 12 and then expanded to about 30 different locations around Iowa, Missouri, Nebraska, and Kansas. And it is Better Hearing Month. I was really glad to hear the introduction and hear about Maryland Relay, just because fantastic service. Lots of people use it and more people should know about it. And it gave me a unique visibility and window into how older adults would deal with chronic conditions like hearing loss, and how it could affect every aspect of their life, and how it really always took a couple people. It took their family or their loved ones or the people around them to really have them do something about hearing loss. And a lot of those ideas from dealing with the difficulties of audiology have found their way into Meadows and the AI we're working on.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, let's jump into this demo, and I'm going to remind our audience that we want to make this interactive. And so by all means, like if there's a question, if there's a comment, and I can also see where guys, yes, we're featuring Andrew and we're each featuring his product, but this is also an opportunity for us to have a conversation just about artificial intelligence from a broader perspective and just technology in senior living. So don't be afraid to get outside the box, because that's where the good ideas happen. And but Andrew, if you want to share your screen, I think you've got some PowerPoints lined up to give us a better picture. And I'm gonna take my face off the screen, but I will jump in if any questions pop up.
Okay, so everyone can see all right. So what we're talking about today, and we actually just went into a beta just a little over a month ago, is Meadows.io, which is the domain name, and we'll post a link so people can check it out. But what this is it's a smart AI for managing chronic conditions. And the basic premise that we were working on was that calling someone, an older adult, every single day will result in a better outcome than if you didn't do that. And we started our focus really on the older adult market, which is why we're all here today, because of our expertise in that space. And one of the things we noticed about older adults is they often have multiple chronic conditions like heart disease and diabetes, or hearing loss and depression. And there's a lot of these comorbidities and multiple issues that make them vulnerable and really need extra care and need support from their family, friends, and healthcare system. Now, one of the things that's happened as everyone has started living longer is that there's a high cost of caregiving in the home. And this isn't just money, as people know. There is a burden that is placed on the family and on the caregivers that maybe they're not professional caregivers. They don't work with the older population. And all of a sudden, they now have a new responsibility. And the healthcare system can't come in and live with you, though, unless you're exceedingly wealthy. And so often the responsibility for day to day falls directly on family members, loved ones, and friends. And so what we were proposing with this is to take a look at a daily check-in, or in the aging life care manager lingo, care notes. So one of the things that I observed that in my mother's aging life care practice was that at the end of every day that a caregiver came to work with an older adult, they would very frequently go through a quick checklist at the end of the day and make sure that they'd eaten meals, make sure that maybe they'd gone to the bathroom, and just a couple other checks on like medication and other things like this. And this checklist is the idea that Meadows has grown out of, is what do we do to, one, give this checklist process to as many people as possible, just because we saw the high impact that it had? And two, how do we apply AI to this so that the checklist is still really valuable? We're checking in on more things, and it's not just like a dull, monotone, same questions every single day. How do we have some variance and possibly identify other conditions or identify other issues over time? And so, we built Meadows. And so we operate on the principle you would call your mom every day if you could. It's what the best sons and daughters do. But you definitely can make an AI call a loved one every single day, and it will do it without fail at the same time or at varied time, without any issue every single day. And so we realized that moving a 2-minute call like this to happen every single day to go over this checklist kind of set a baseline where a call would happen. It was an event that would happen every single day. And then we would take all of the answers that the person would say to their phone in the AI. So they don't need an app. They don't need a device. They could just use a rotary phone if they wanted to. But they just pick up the phone, talk for 2 minutes to the questions. The AI introduces itself as working with their caregiver or their family member or whoever signed them up for Meadows. And then after they finish their phone call, everything that they said is converted into a text message or an email and sent to the caregiver's phone in a way where it can then be tracked and other family members could come and look at a history. So that way it's kind of easy for multiple people to manage the care. And the older adult doesn't have to do anything that they're not already doing, which is picking up a phone and talking. One of the things that I thought was really interesting about this, just while testing this out, was that my grandmother actually is using Meadows every single day, and my father will time his calls to her to check in on her based on when the Meadows call actually takes place. And this is one of those fascinating instances of like human beings finding a way to treat this as like, oh, that's the time when people are ready to talk about how they're doing and kind of adapt around the system. So I'll introduce Barbara as a testimonial, and this is a text message directly from her. I asked her for one for this presentation. She's a 82-year-old firecracker living in Alameda, and here's what she had to say. Meadows is very enjoyable for me to use. It is like someone visiting me every night. Like you have a companion that understands what you are doing. I would recommend Meadows to everyone. It is a pleasant experience. The reason I bring this up is Barbara is living in the Bay Area and recently has transitioned to an extended hospital stay and skilled nursing. And she is the perfect testimonial for this particular situation because she went from using an AI that was checking in on her every day, and it was useful. It gave a window into her life and checking on her nutrition. She had depression, hearing loss, these sort of questions. But then when she was on her own in an unfamiliar environment, the usefulness became all the more important that she kind of had a guaranteed lifeline every single day where she could let people know if she was uncomfortable in a hospital or in a skilled nursing facility, where she could just say, oh, I have an issue. Because at the end of every single call, Meadows gives a little opportunity of, would you like to share anything else? And so she could say, oh, my chair isn't comfy. Yeah, please give me a call. Little notes like this that just without that every single day at the same time kind of reliable baseline might not be surfaced to her family members and loved ones. So this is kind of a slide designed for the medical people in the audience right here, which is a bit about what we've talked about better patient outcomes and those simple high impact questions. But the real purpose of this slide is to kind of show what the questions are and showcase how we've divided the chronic conditions that Meadows follows into threads. So when you sign a person up on Meadows, you select a couple chronic condition threads that they may have or they may be at risk of. And so I have the first question with our heart disease thread because way back when we were first designing this in a hackathon with a bunch of like MBA, PhD doctors, they really focused in on heart disease because it's one of the biggest problems affecting Americans and people around the world. And every single one of them pointed to did you experience shortness of breath today? Which is this initial indicator, maybe a day or two or even hours before someone who has chronic heart disease might experience a heart attack. And so if you are a person that has high blood pressure or heart disease, if you just are able to let anything know that you had shortness of breath, you could kind of see that a problem might happen. And if the caregiver knows, even if it's a small shortness of breath, or like maybe you just did a little bit of higher exertion than what you normally do, having that known to the caregiver really allows for better adaptation and the ability to get in front of problems before they become acute, like a heart attack. The stakes are a little bit lower, but not a lot lower for conditions like diabetes with measuring blood glucose levels and kind of staying on top of diabetes. And then, of course, depression, asking questions like, how are you doing today? Did you talk to a friend or loved one today? Or did you play with your dog or take your dog for a walk? If you have dogs, which is a checkbox you can do in the settings in Meadows, and then it'll ask you about your pets. And then well-being. We asked a bunch of doctors what the first question that they ask when people come into a room, when they make it into their office. And almost universally, every single doctor will throw a softball at you. How are you doing today? And so we realized the value of this after some discussion, that this is a really good diagnostic question because the initial response for most people is to just say, I'm doing great, I'm fine, I'm good. But when they don't, that is highly valuable information for that to be surfaced to the caregiver. And it means it's time to enact the plan of care and do something about it. So here's our faster, better, cheaper slide of why this works. We talked about costs earlier, and not just in money, but in time, in stress, in issues on your life. And so one of the goals here is to take a small part of the burden of being a caregiver and find what we can do and push it onto an AI. Doctors will make calls to patients after heart surgery, even though their time is incredibly valuable. But after they finish a heart surgery or a major operation, a doctor will call and check in on how a person's doing, because their recovery is so important and it's so critical at that time that even if the doctor's time is like $150, $500 an hour, they'll still do it in that one instance just because it's so important. But they can't do it every day. They have a lot of patients, they have a lot of things that they're working on, and it's very difficult to context switch. So being able to put that responsibility onto an AI that will ask the same questions and it will be tracked in a way where people can find it later is the next best thing that we can do. And so in the interest of being able to lower costs to the overall system while still getting the high value answers, that's what affordable is. Then the simple aspect here, as I mentioned earlier, we'd started working with trying to layer Meadows on top of an Alexa or a Google Home, but really quickly ran into a whole bunch of stumbling blocks and issues, and realized that you couldn't get the other AIs to stop listening when it was healthcare related, and you couldn't get them to sign a contract saying, we'll be keeping this private under HIPAA. You just can't even get them to interact at all in most instances. And so we decided that condensing the entire invasiveness into their life into a 2-minute phone call where they're clearly answering questions and giving consent to that, and then answering them and having them be sent to family members was much better than having a bug in your house that's literally always listening. And we didn't have to have any other companies sign contracts with us, and it could just be as easy as an older adult answering the phone and not needing to install hardware in the house or do anything new. So it's sort of, this comes from my time in the Midwest in Iowa, where half of the staff didn't have internet at home, and most of the patients didn't really have internet and weren't comfortable using apps. And so we wanted to find a way to make this highly accessible and robust so that it could just work for people in Iowa as well as people in California or even overseas. And then lastly, effective. Even though this is a simple thing and it's just a few minutes, the good habit of doing this really does result in people being able to stay at home longer, just because there is someone checking in and there's less worry. And as the chronic conditions kind of progress, it definitely makes sense to recommend a caregiver or to recommend maybe assisted living or other options like that. But in that interim period between kind of when the chronic conditions set in and when they become so serious that it's not really realistic to stay at home alone, there's a lot of peace of mind that can be achieved with a system like this. So here's just a very quick diagram of how the flow works. It's a little bit of a timeline. So it starts with a primary caregiver adding an older adult and then choosing conditions. We set our default time that Meadows calls to 8 p.m., but we let people change it around if they want. We picked 8 p.m. In their local time, whatever the older adult is, because it's after dinner, it was in the evening, and we felt that given that we're asking a bunch of questions about how the day went, and it's that end of day check-in, if we did it in the morning, maybe the sleep would have erased whatever they did that day. And we didn't really want to interrupt dinner, but we wanted to have it at like a normal set time where people would usually still be awake. So that's how we picked 8. Then, yeah, we picked some validated questions. I've gone over a couple for heart conditions and diabetes, but these are all from validated lists and questionnaires that are in use. for checking on memory loss, checking on heart disease, all these different conditions. And then there's an online portal that the family can go look at that kind of determines an overall score, shows how many checkups are missed, and shows the last checkup time, as well as a kind of cool calendar where you can see like, oh, maybe last month was really good, but this month we're kind of having a bad month, if you will, like they're not sleeping well. So we tried to do some cool data presentation stuff to make it easy to understand. And this is one of my last slides, which is on the superpowers, if you will. And so this slide really is meant to focus on what AI can do that human beings aren't really as good at. And so the first one that I'll start with is I call shift the burden. And we don't really know if this is the best title for it, but what we're trying to capture is the concept that arguing with an older adult about a poorly managed chronic condition, like a diabetic patient who insists on eating cake, or a patient with chronic heart disease that still eats salty foods and eats bacon every morning for breakfast. These discussions, when they're person to person, are very he said, she said, and they can get argumentative and difficult. But if an AI asks you and you're filling out a survey and just talking about it, and then it's just written there in paper and you're talking about something that was said, it's a different conversation. It's a lot more clinical in nature. It's a lot more reserved, and we feel that it removes a lot of the stress from the equation. And this is really, really valuable on moving burdens off of caregivers so that they don't have to worry when they go into talks with an older adult as much, and they can more just be frank. The next one that we have is detecting changes over time. This is something that robots are really good at that human beings are not as good at, which is kind of seeing the same sort of thing happen every day and noticing changes. When humans look at it, maybe stuff is gradual and you might not notice, but when it's clearly written and put on a calendar and you can see the trend from day to day going down, this is where AI excels and where just computers excel at keeping track of this sort of stuff. But it goes beyond just keeping track of an answer. Some of the things that we want to explore in the future is being able to detect emotions in their voices, like if they're happy or if they're sad or if they're angry or disgusted when they're Meadows, and being able to pick up some of those vocal cues can give an idea as to what their mood is and kind of categorize their mood. And then beyond just emotion, one of the things that happens with older adults is they slow down a little bit. And this can manifest in hearing loss, and it can also manifest in conditions like Alzheimer's and dementia, where with hearing loss, it's easy to tell because their vocal range gets louder because they can't hear as well. So they shout at the TV or they shout into the phone. But with Alzheimer's and dementia, and also conditions like COPD, people's speech patterns will change and they'll slow down, and they have different ways of speaking. And one of the things that we want to detect over time is kind of show this. And whereas a family caregiver might not be equipped to notice, they might just think in the back of their head that something is wrong. If we have an AI that can actually tell, that we think is highly valuable. The second to last one is the coordination skills for this. I got to see this firsthand when you're the primary caregiver for someone who is in a hospital. Oftentimes you will go talk to a doctor, or you'll talk to someone about their, like the older adult, about their condition. And there's a big list of people that really want to know how that person is doing. And the first 3 or 4 days, it's no problem to be like, oh, I just spoke with my grandmother and she's doing really good. This, and this is happening. But after 3 or 4 days, it does start to get difficult to keep everyone else in the loop. And so this is where, AI excels, and you can put the burden of keeping everyone in the loop on an artificial intelligence. And then the last point that I want to make deals with other AIs. We're talking about Meadows right now, but I don't want to limit the conversation just to Meadows. I'd like to talk about the other AIs that will become commonplace throughout the healthcare system. and how we view what Meadows is doing in terms of interacting with that. So long term, and I spoke about a month ago actually with a doctor at the NHS in the United Kingdom who is working on treating hypertension with an AI. So the way it works is there's a AI, there's a computer that is going to meet with a patient. There's a doctor in the room, and the patient tells that AI, here's my blood pressure, here's how I'm doing today, here's my age, here's the medications I'm on. And then the AI takes all that data in and makes a call. Okay, I'm going to now prescribe you a medication for hypertension or something like that. And they're basing a lot of their decisions off of what's discussed in the medical office that day. But you aren't just who you are when you show up that day. You are your entire history beforehand. And after that AI doctor prescribes hypertension and the other doctor in the room looks at it and goes, thumbs up, pretty good. The next steps afterwards of whether or not your condition had a better outcome or a worse outcome is really important to know. And so these future AI that will be in other parts of the healthcare system, we view Meadows as being kind of their eye into the day-to-day living, both before and after. And yeah, that's opens up the discussion for more things about questions for AI. I'd be happy to answer. I have our contact info right here. You can shoot us a note. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to go over any other details that anyone has.
I love it. This is great, Andrew. And we do have some questions and comments that have come in, but yeah, you referenced a rotary phone. Just in case there's somebody in the audience that didn't know what one of those looked like, I have one here on my desk. It's not plugged in, and my kids just laugh at it every time they see that. But you know, I have a friend that works at Amazon, and many of us who work in the audience who are used to the annual employee survey, okay? And it's this annual survey that we fill out, and generally, you know, it's once a year. And if you're upset with your boss on that day, you are going to fill it out one way. If you're happy with your job, you're going to fill it out another. And it's this, it actually is a horrible way to sort of judge employee satisfaction. And an interesting thing that this reminds me of is that at Amazon, every morning when all the Amazon employees open up their computer and log in, it asks them a simple question, okay? And the questions are varied, but they're designed to sort of gauge how is that employee doing. And it's amazing how this data can now be used, you know, if there's a conflict amongst employees, or if you're concerned that your manager isn't managing you correctly, or if an employee is not as productive, they have a baseline that they can, you know, look at the organization on as a whole and individually. And as you said, there is no possible way that a human could administer that. That is one example of artificial intelligence, and I love this one. So got a couple of comments that I want to jump into here. Is let's see, first, Jan, let's see, who is it here? Janet Gritz says, Meadows would be helpful for stroke survivors. And she asks also about, how about using Meadows for early to moderate stage dementia? Any thoughts on either of those?
Yeah, I'll go into both. On the stroke side, absolutely. We've focused more on the overall heart disease as a general focus, but definitely we are looking at including a bunch more chronic conditions, and stroke is really high up on the list of those. And yeah, it's absolutely something that we're thinking about. We're looking at kidney disease to add, and just a whole bunch of other things that affect a lot of people. But we started with some of the core really big ones that affect a lot of people. And we do have a thread for memory loss. which is the next question, dealing with Alzheimer's and moderate dementia. However, I definitely have some worries about the ethics and reasonability of having a person with the onset of dementia interacting with an AI. I could be wrong, but my gut feeling is that that might be a little bit risky and difficult. And so one of the things we definitely plan to mention is, if someone has moderate to severe dementia or maybe medium to late onset Alzheimer's, that this probably isn't the best fit. Now, the caregivers are welcome to test it out and see if it works. Really, this is an information tool. And at the end of the day, we want to take burden off caregivers. And there's a serious burden that is placed on people trying to manage Alzheimer's and dementia. But there definitely are some things to look out for with that, and to just be really, really careful with.
Yeah. And actually, I'm glad you sort of, because the call to action here, that Andrew, you, I think, had alluded to it, that you're in your beta testing phase. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, is to help you find people that can test this out. And you're in that phase, correct? I'm not misspeaking.
Yeah, you can sign up right now. We just actually launched about a month ago. So we are tweaking a bunch of the things with onboarding. So it is in the early phases. So please do be a bit patient with us. But if someone wants to test it out and go sign up, please do. The domain is meadows.io, and feel free. You can, if you send an email to contact@meadows.io, that goes straight to me. And I would be more than happy to answer any questions, or even set up an introductory call if you're nervous or want to know some of the details about what we're doing, because we're definitely in the early stages.
And no cost. So this is, at this
we
phase,
plan
no
to
cost.
have a cost in the future, but right now everything is totally free. And the cost that we're planning on doing in the future will be really low. We're thinking somewhere around $30 a month per patient. But we don't collect any money. Everything right now is completely free to try out. And we plan on always having a free, but maybe with a slightly different feature set than the complete thing.
Okay, we got a few questions here, and this is exciting. Let's see. Okay, Paula. Paula asks, what would happen if the person doesn't answer the phone, or they don't hear or answer the question?
Absolutely. This is a great question that we spent a lot of time thinking about. So if you miss the call, you can call back, and it will know that it's that day for the check-in, and it will just answer and say, thanks for calling me. Let's do your check-in. If you hang up halfway through and then you call it back, it'll say, I noticed you didn't finish your check-in. Would you like to complete the one you were in the middle of, or start a new one? And so it is kind of adaptive around that, and we'll figure out that you're doing. And then lastly, if they miss the call and like an hour goes by, it will text the caregiver and say, we noticed that your didn't complete their check-in today. Maybe you want to give them a call and remind them.
Great. And let's see, John is asking, would you be willing to share your PowerPoint with folks? Could I, if you emailed that to me, could I email it
Absolutely.
out? Okay. Yeah. And it's, and I just threw in Meadows.io into chat. It's contact@Meadows.io. A couple of questions on that. Let's see, can this AI app assist with home care providers in assisting their clients, and in what way? Good question. And I certainly could see where this could be super beneficial to home care providers, even senior living providers, a scheduled call in, especially, shoot, if you were around a year ago when everybody was isolated in their rooms, boy, that would have been fantastic.
So definitely, as I mentioned, my mother's care manager in the Bay Area. So we definitely, a lot of what she has to deal with on a day-to-day basis on into the development of this. And so we made sure that one caregiver could manage multiple patients in the system. And then one of the things that we're working on right now is how we allow multiple different roles on the caregiver side, like primary caregiver, secondary caregiver, and then like extended family. Right now, we just say like share the login and they can go log in and see. But that is one of the things that we do have planned right now. But we started first with, if you're a care manager and have 12 patients, then this is how you would do it. This is, and yeah, we could watch a short demo. This is it working live, and this is how it is.
There was a question that somebody asked. It says, "Can we hear out sounds?" And I found your demo here. So you're okay. Folks, if you want to buckle in, this is a 2-minute demo of the product, and you can get a little bit of a better picture here. Before I play this, somebody says, thanks to your mother and team for working so hard in creating and designing Meadows. And we answered her question with the beta question here. So I'm gonna play this demo here. Hopefully everybody can hear it just fine. I guess there's no sound right now, right?
There will be in a second.
Okay.
Hi, Barbara. This is Meadows calling for your daily checkup. I will ask you some questions to see if you are doing well. On a scale from 1 to 10, how good are you feeling today?
9.
Sounds like we are on track. Do you have a good night's sleep?
Yes.
Good. Did you fall asleep in a chair or couch today?
No.
Great so far. Overall, how happy did you feel today on a scale from 1 to 10?
8.
Good. Let's go to the next question. Have you called a friend or loved one today?
No.
That is clear. Have you had trouble falling or staying asleep, or sleeping too much today?
No.
We're on the right track. Let's continue. Did you have a poor appetite or overeat today?
No.
Super. How high were your pain levels today on a scale from 1 to 10?
1.
That's great. Did you take any medications to manage your pain today?
Yes.
Okay. Was it difficult for you to move your arms or legs today?
No.
Good. Have you fallen today?
No.
We're on the right track. Let's continue. Is there anything you would like to add?
No.
Noted. It is always a pleasure to hear from you. I look forward to our next visit. I will make sure everything we talked about is sent to your caregiver.
Great. I think that probably helped people see visualize it a little bit better. And whoops.
I run a busy team.
Okay. The downside to YouTube is it always starts another video after you play something. So I hope that was helpful to folks in terms of seeing a different, seeing the platform in action.
And it does vary every day. So they're not, some of the questions, like, did you have a good night's sleep? If you're tracking sleep, will be the same every day, because you just can't get around that one. But generally the questions vary, and there's a couple different ways that it will ask them and different ways that it will run, so that it doesn't get boring.
I love it. Okay, well, I'm glancing at the clock and it's almost, we're almost done with the hour. These go by so quickly, it's crazy. You know, I don't want to put your mom on the spot, but you said that she's in the audience.
Yeah.
I wonder if your mom would be willing to jump on here.
Of course.
Mom, raise your virtual hand and I'll, okay, there you go. I'm going to bring you on as a panel member here, and let's get to see the inspiration of this concept, and there's mom. Hello.
Right there.
Yeah, I'm sure you're proud of your son, and I love to see sort of parent and child working together in an entrepreneurial venture. But you know, since you're sort of the first, your aging life care practice was the first lab rat for this idea. How has it helped you and your team?
I mean, I watched it evolve from the beginning, and I think they're doing a wonderful job, making good progress, making adaptations along the way. I think it has huge potential. So it's an exciting product. I'm proud of Andrew and his team.
I love it. Let's see. Somebody says, you may have answered this, but how much input and feedback did you receive from the seniors and receivers of this care with Meadows? So yeah, so I guess you're in beta, but you've had users up to this point, and I'm assuming that you've had some challenges probably that you've adapted to, but you've got some positive stories that are leading you to continue down this path. What are some of the positive, you know, benefits that you've seen? And this is for both of you there.
So I'll start and then pass it over. So a lot of the questions that we asked, we would send a survey to some of our early users to be like, how much do you like this question, 1 to 10, to ask if they thought it was useful. And then we sort of pruned questions that nobody liked and then added new ones that were really useful. And then one of the ones that I thought was really interesting, and when we're talking about AI being able to do things that human, and we're in the middle of deploying this, but someone asked, oh, can Meadows speak Spanish? And it can't right now, but I took all of the question sets and worked with a family friend member and had them just translate it all. And it took a couple days. And within the scope of this year, Meadows will speak Spanish. And then that can then be deployed across other languages.
That's fantastic when you think about the caregiving situations that we've got with foreign speaking clients and what have you. The holy cow, I blanked out there when you hit me with the foreign language. My question is, so every user, can their experience be customized? You're not just pushing out all the same questions to the whole user base, or how does that work?
So we are doing the same questions, but it does vary every day.
Okay.
You can pick multiple threads. So we usually recommend like 3 or 4, but you could pick all of them if you wanted. You'll just have a longer check-in. We specifically aren't letting people set their own questions right now because we want to keep the questions validated and keep them consistent. Because one of the other AI things that we want to do is apply machine learning to the questions so that overall, as time goes by, we ask better questions and have better answers based on how people talk.
Yeah, and this is, you know, for our audience, this is one of the challenges and benefits of being in a beta test environment is to get those questions. That's the reason Andrew's reaching out to get more beta testers, build that question bank, and you could see where down the road with a large enough question bank, it would be very easy for somebody to customize the system based on here's the questions you can choose for your loved one or what have you. Joel asks, on some of the 1 to 10 questions, if the answer is a significant change, can the program drill down? I guess we
have a Boolean on this, which basically means, was it a good or was it a bad answer? And if the answer wasn't good, in the text message one that it sends to the caregiver, it writes it in all caps, concerning, on that question. And then outside of that, there are some questions that only get asked if the previous one was concerning.
Okay. And
Like
then
the sleep is a great example.
another question, HIPAA and health insurance privacy. You'd mentioned, is this protection provided for? You had mentioned Alexa and Google, but on this platform, are you HIPAA compliant, or I don't know how you would describe that?
So we do, in our onboarding, we have people sign a HIPAA release, and we do maintain across the entire process such that we would meet HIPAA compliance standards. Right now, because we aren't sending any info directly to a doctor or to an insurance provider, HIPAA compliance isn't actually required of us because we're not a healthcare provider or working in the healthcare space. We sort of do what we can to have everything flow through Caregiver. So that way, kind of the call is on them if they want to do something with the information. Longer term, yes, we will absolutely be HIPAA compliant. Right now, we just meet all the standards because this product's been around for a month and I need to go hire a lawyer to actually make this a fully deployable system. But we do have a valid, and we are following all of the steps to make sure that your privacy is maintained.
Great. Well, our hour is up. I want to thank you, Andrew and Karen, for your ingenuity and moving into this space. I think we need pioneers trying to pull every lever to improve the way that we care and connect with our elders. And so I'm really excited to see where this goes. And I hope that we are able to bring you some beta testers, and it'll be great to check in with you in the future and as you kind of move through this product release stage. But
thank you so much, Steve.
Yep. And so anyways, and you're both in the Bay Area, correct?
Yeah.
So good morning. It's time for lunch for all of us here in the Mid-Atlantic, but you guys can go get another cup of coffee after this discussion. So thanks everybody for participating. We'll have the recording up shortly in podcast, and we'll be sure to send out a copy of the slide deck and contact information for you to sign up and get in touch with Andrew. All right.